Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order. We start with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Willets. Here. Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next up, we have a request for approval of the City Council work session and evening meeting minutes from February 8th.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the City Council and work session evening meeting minutes from February 8th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, we call the roll?
Woodings.
Yes.
Agent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Willets. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, we have two items under special business. First off, Kevin is here with the revised findings from CVA 21-31.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So if you recall, 2 weeks ago on the 1st, you heard a reconsideration of an appeal at 2629 West Ellis Avenue. So this is related to a variance to encroach into this side and rear yard setbacks for a detached garage and ADU. At that meeting, you directed staff to come back with a revised reason statement and conditions of approval to allow for the requested variance based on the new information that was presented to you that evening. So that new reason statement and related conditions of approval are included in your packet. And so really, we're just asking you for the official motion to adopt those this evening.
Madam Mayor. Well, having read the packet, it is exactly what we directed. I appreciate that. And I know that this one took a lot of energy from staff, and we all really appreciate that too. So with that, I would move approval of the revised findings in CVA 21-31.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Further discussion? Clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings.
Yes.
Agent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Willets. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, Kevin. And next up, we'll move to Mike Chirac, who's with us for the fiscal year 22 Q1 report.
Madam Mayor, council members, good evening. Mike Chirac from the Budget Office. And yes, I have the first quarter financial report. Is that up on this? There we go. First quarter financial report, I have some slides. You should have received an electronic copy of this in your meeting materials. There is the cover, picture of the greenbelt. And I'll just get right into the revenues, just give some hit some of the high points with revenues. Property tax, there's only a little bit there, 75,000, because that comes in during the second quarter. About almost 60% of the budget amount, nearly 100 million, came in January, as it normally does. With sales tax, the number there is actually a year-end accrual that did not reverse properly in the first quarter. That will be fixed in the second quarter. There is an interesting note, if you saw it in the report about sales tax. We were expecting 1% growth per the recent state legislation, and we were expecting 5.3 million, and the amount came in and it was 6.7 million. And as it turns out, this was unexpected from our perspective. The State Tax Commission does look at that quarterly, not annually. And so you can go from 1% to the full growth, whatever that is, on a quarterly basis. And so that was an additional 1.3 million of revenue for the quarter in sales tax. And that represented a 26% increase from the year before. So we were surprised by that. Moving on to development fees, 3.7 million for the quarter. We are above the 25% quarterly benchmark. So plenty of work in planning and development, and it's showing up in the revenues. And if this trend continues, we will exceed budget If we even match last year's amount, we'll be over budget by almost $2 million. So we'll monitor that, but lots of activity there, lots of revenue and development fees. Franchise fees, again, we have a couple of year-end accruals, which didn't reverse there. So a little bit of noise, but from some of the amounts I've looked at for garbage and water, they're up. Water was up more. Again, we will monitor this. That may have been a reading just due to the hot summer without a lot of precipitation. Water use may have been up and shows up in our franchise fees. Liquor tax is up 2.1% over last year, the quarterly payments. Departmental revenue is interesting. We are up in public safety due to some additional police revenues. In parks, the revenues are doing well. Golf has been very busy during the pandemic. The zoo is in the same category. Idaho Ice World is back online with some new fees, so that is also apparent. Parking is up from where it was. It's still down from where it was before the pandemic, but all in all, things are looking okay there. And then fines and forfeitures is kind of like parking. It's up from last year, but it's still down from where it was pre-pandemic. Internal charges are on track, and our other revenues are down from last year just due to some pandemic grant revenue from the federal government we had there in last year's figure. So there's a quick run through of our revenues. Moving on to expenses, one of our biggest expenses is people. And if you look at the personnel subtotal, you'll see a 22% as a percent of budget. That actually should be 23%. We need to adjust that a little bit. Up in our healthcare costs, the way those costs are booked and payrolls fell, we had one of those 6 payrolls for the quarter that fell into second quarter. Again, that will be caught up with an additional payroll here in second quarter. But that 18% for health benefit healthcare costs should be like 21%. And so our personnel, about 23% is where it should be for the quarter. That's 2% underspend. The other thing to note there is our overtime is up slightly due to vacancies in public safety, and that overtime also includes the constant staffing and fire. So there is personnel. Moving on to maintenance and operations expenses, repairs and maintenance usually run high early in the year just due to the timing of software maintenance and license costs, which are front-loaded in the year. Supplies and materials, there is some apparent underspend. It is early in the year. Professional services are largely driven by projects. That is also low. Again, it's early in the year. So M&O does look similar to last year with some savings. There may well be savings, but it's early in the year. We will see if the year evolves like it did last year, or if we can execute more projects and expense some of those expenses. The other lines, major equipment, early in the year again, and there may be some supply chain issues with our ability to get certain things. Other, that includes our contingencies, and those have not been spent in recent years. Grants are near our benchmark, and then our transfers out is high because we paid off $14.3 million of debt after year end. So there is a look at expenses. And just to summarize again, revenues largely as expected. Parking and fines and forfeitures are still below our pre-pandemic levels. Parks fees are doing well, but the composition is what we're looking at. There still are some restrictions with programs and number of participants and social distancing and things. But all in all, those are doing better than they have. Sales tax, we had an unexpected growth of 1.3 million, and then development fee, the trend of those revenues would exceed budget. And then our expense savings, the personnel underspend is due to significant vacancies. In the general fund, we're in the neighborhood of 170 vacancies. And then we have some M&O underspend so far this year as well. Are there any questions on that piece of it before I switch to the economic brief slides?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. Thanks, Mike. It's generally good news here, I guess, along those lines. What is the expectation with this change in our understanding of how the tax commission is handling the sales tax for end of year if that trend continues. And I guess my bigger question is, what will we do in terms of having a conversation about how to utilize that money if it is indeed over budget as much as it looks like it might be?
Mayor, council member, good question. Our expectation is with the sales tax that may happen again, but it could easily change, and it is a tricky one to predict. That is a base increase, so next year we will get that 1.3 million in our base. We may be restricted to 1% growth on that, but that would continue. As far as a conversation on that, we're looking to program some one-time savings from this year into the budget. So as we go through the budget process, that's where we're looking to try to factor in some of these things we've already identified, and we'll be farther along. One more point on the sales tax too is we see it is based on per capita sales tax revenue, and a change in some Census Bureau information may have driven that. State Tax Commission saw some updated Census Bureau information, reran their calculations. We were into that zone where we got the full growth by about 20 cents out of about an average of like $22 thereabouts. So 20 cents higher, we wouldn't have gotten it. That range is narrowing. It's just going to be tricky to predict, but we may get another quarter or two where we get further growth. The other thing is we're the biggest city, so we have the most sales tax. So when we're in the growth, that may swing the averages. It's just very hard to predict.
Thank you. Second question, as I looked at the overtime, it was hard to suss out where that overtime was being used. I can guess, but you know, if you look at the departments that are low on staff and so under budget on regular salary, but perhaps over budget because of overtime for the staff that's left. I just wonder, is that what we're seeing, or is there, say in the past, for instance, we've had issues with contract employees in how the overtime gets utilized. Did you see any patterns in that, I guess, is my question.
Council member, most of it is in public safety and police and fire. There's a little bit here and there, and most of our cost is in exempt employees who aren't overtime eligible. So you have non-exempt employees throughout the organization that could get overtime, or there could be some compensation time they can convert, and that I believe that happens in December. So most of it is in police and fire, and there is a vacancy effect where they're short-staffed, and so they have more overtime, or in fire, they also have constant staffing. That's where we're seeing most of it.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't some anomaly there. Appreciate it.
Other questions? All right.
Okay, I will move on to a few slides on the economic brief. The first slide here is just unemployment. And during the quarter, unemployment rate went down from 2%, which is very low, to 1.6%, which is even lower. It cannot go a whole lot lower, but that's where we are. And if we look at our metropolitan statistical area, we can compare that across other Western cities. And we rank very well. We rank 31st out of 389 MSAs. Salt Lake is even lower, and they're very near the top of that list. So unemployment is coming down most everywhere, but it's still a little higher in the larger cities. Other just highlights from the economic brief. Employment is tracking slightly below 2019 levels, so pre-pandemic. And you can see it in the graph below there. The line on the right, towards the right on top there, there's a blue line. It's a little hard to see, but it is just slightly below the green line. And that shows where we are. We're tracking similarly. We've got immigration, but we're just not growing above and beyond that. That's largely a factor of labor force participation is lower. This is the people who retired, the working parents who aren't back yet. People are concerned about the virus and so on. So we watch that. Hopefully that improves and we start getting ahead of where we were a couple of years ago. Development activity continues at a high level, as I mentioned back in development fees. The housing inventory improved slightly, particularly the middle of last year, but then it has come back down. It's still very low. The median home sales prices are way up last year in the state. From December to December, they're 23%, and in Boise it was 31%. The sales tax revenue sharing, I mentioned this earlier, the amount that goes to revenue share is up 17%, which is an exceedingly high number. 6 to 8% would be good growth. 10% is way up there. 17 is high. And then we got a 26.3% growth after being limited to 1% for 5 quarters. Airport traffic is back to 2019 levels, more or less. You can see that in the graph below. You can see where there are a lot of flight cancellations, and the Omicron variant was setting in December and caused some people not to travel. But air traffic does appear to be back on a similar trend to where it was. Consumer sentiment hit a 10-year low in November, and just today I saw February's, it's even lower, and there's just different things going on with that, whether it's inflation, geopolitical concerns, just weariness about the pandemic. That's probably showing up there, but that is something also that we monitor. And then for economic growth, real GDP adjusted for inflation is projected to grow 5.5%. This that was 21, and then 4.3% now in 22. And so to summarize there, both the quarterly report and the economic brief, our revenues have mostly returned to normal levels. Expenditures are below budget, again, driven by significant vacancies. Our economic conditions are generally favorable, but concerns continue. Supply chain, and we view labor as now within that realm. It's a supply chain issue. Housing affordability and availability are both key issues here. I mentioned the consumer sentiment. Inflation is out there. We watch that. And then there's also recent geopolitical concerns. That's what I have. Are there any further questions?
Looks like you're getting off easy, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move into the consent agenda. Items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have 2 ordinances on first reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the first reading be read by name and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 4-22 and ordinance CAR 21-00018 for property located at 12371 and 12553 West Goldenrod Avenue, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance, from A-1 open lands park to R-1B single family residential, setting forth a reason statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD 5-22, an ordinance CAR 21-00023 for property located at 914 West Royal Boulevard and 917 South Lusk Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance, from C-2D, general commercial with design review, to R-ODDDA, residential office with downtown design review and development agreement, setting forth a reason statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. We've got nothing on second or third reading, but we do have one on first, second, and third reading.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that all rules of the council interfering with the immediate consideration of ORD 6-22 be suspended, that the portions of Idaho Code Section 5902 requiring an ordinance to be read on 3 different days, twice by title and once in full, be dispensed with, and that the record show it has been read the 3rd time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD 6-22, an ordinance repealing Boise City Code Title II, Chapter 9, Housing and Community Development Citizens Advisory Committee, providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
I guess there's a final step to pass this. I move that ORD 6-22 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you. We will now move on to public hearing portion of our evening. First up, welcome back, Kevin. We've got CAR 21 dash 34.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'll wait for my presentation to show up here and get into it. I think I can be pretty brief with my remarks here, though. There we go. Yeah, so before you is a request to rezone about 3.2 acres from A1 and R1C to M1D, or light industrial design review. So the subject properties shown here in red on the left are all owned by the Boise Airport and are located on the south side of Victory Road, just to the west of the airport itself. So we are at the edge of the city here with properties zoned industrial and residential in the county to the south. City zone properties also with an M1D designation to the north and east, with some A1 zoning to the west. As you can see here on the left, all 4 properties have an industrial land use designation, which does support the requested M1D zone. As I mentioned earlier, these properties are quite close to the airport and are owned by the airport. And it's safe to say that it's really this proximity that's defining how this whole area is developing. As you can see here, the parcels are located in what we refer to as Airport Influence Area C, and so are subject to noise levels which are incompatible with any sort of residential use or really any noise-sensitive uses in general. As outlined in your project report, the rezone to M1D is consistent with other redevelopment in the area and does support the airport master plan, which calls for aviation compatible industrial developments, which supports the economic growth of the city as a whole. So in conclusion, it's really for all these reasons that in their meeting on December 13th, the Planning and Zoning Commission did find that this request complied with all the standards of approval for rezone and has recommended approval. Thanks.
Any questions for Kevin? All right. Well, now we have the applicant, Amy Schneider, with the airport. Do you have additional parts of the presentation? Does anybody want to ask? Because it's listed twice, I just wanted to check. It was all part of Kevin's presentation. Great. Okay, so the Neighborhood Association of Record is South Cole. Is South Cole here this evening online?
Madam Mayor, I only have one person online, so if they are with South Cole, I would just request that they raise their hand. And I have no one raising their hands,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
And we have nobody that signed up in advance to testify. Everybody in the room I know is here for different applications. Anybody else online here to testify for this? But with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would move for approval of CAR 21-34 for the reasons set forth in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Willetts. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will move on. Welcome, David, to CAR 21-30, an application by Erstad Architects.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Members of the council. The applicant is requesting approval of a rezone of 1.45 acre subject property from R2 medium density residential, 14.5 units an acre, to R3D multifamily residential with a design review at 43.5 units an acre located at 1728 South Annette Street. In addition, a conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 48 multifamily units was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. This residential plan unit development was not appealed and is not before the council tonight. And as you can see from the aerial photograph, the neighborhood that the subject property is located is a mix of residential uses, which include multifamily, single-family duplexes, and a school. I'd also note that Annette Street is a local roadway, which dead ends to the south in a loop and connects to Overland to the north. And as you can see from this slide, the R3 zone is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood since the adjacent properties are zoned R2 to the west and north and R3 and PCD to the northeast, east, and south. In addition, a small portion of the subject property is currently zoned R3D. It is also compatible with the comprehensive plan as it designates the site as mixed use on the land use map, within which the proposed R3 is allowed and anticipated. The Planning and Zoning Commission did discuss several topics regarding the project. First is the pedestrian connectivity to the surrounding neighborhood, and to promote connectivity, a pedestrian pathway cross-access easement could be provided to the northeast and east. Also, the proposed development will require design review approval, and the pedestrian cross-access easement could be required at that time. I would note that up in the corner, I did show a potential location of where that cross-access easement could go to the north or to the northeast and to the east. There's other locations along the east property line that would also be sufficient. Second, a condition of approval of the planned unit development required all the trees be retained and protected and mitigated for as per the landscape ordinance prior to the grading permit. This condition was included in the PUD since a complete tree mitigation and assessment was not possible due to the winter season, and the health of the trees could not be assessed because they were dormant. As such, it was hard to tell if the project is in compliance with the landscape ordinance. However, the tree mitigation plan and assessment will be completed for the project, and it will comply with the landscape ordinance. And then finally, ACHD noted that there is capacity on Annette Street to handle the amount of traffic generated from the project, and Annette Street will be at its capacity with this project. As such, further development along Annette Street would be difficult without additional improvements or really a vehicle connection to the surrounding street network system, since it only has one access in and out. However, I would note ACHD did state that the right-of-way could support the proposed project. These issues just discussed are also closely related to the concerns expressed by the neighbors and the Vista Neighborhood Association regarding the project. Their concerns focus on the compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood in terms of density and increased traffic along Annette. And to address these concerns, I would note that the adjacent properties are zoned R3 and PCD, which anticipate more intense developments. In addition, the surrounding properties along Annette Street are comprised of a mix of resident developments, which include multifamily even on the subject property currently. Also, as already stated, ACHD noted that Annette Street can support the project. So in conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the rezone on January 3rd. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions for our
Madam Mayor?
team? Yes, go ahead.
Just one question about Palouse Street. Is the capacity just that it only has the one exit, or not Palouse Street, different application, Annette Street, is that it just has one exit on to Overland? Or is it the width of the street? Is it the lack of sidewalks? Is it there? Or is it just the one exit?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as far as capacity, it's really just the one exit in and out. Limits it to 1,000 vehicle trips per day capacity. And with this project, it takes it to slightly over that, which is fine with ACHD's standards, provided the fire district was supporting it, and they did.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. So 2 quick questions. The potential pathway connection, I was going to suggest that if there is going to be one, it would be in that corner because there does appear to be a lane coming off of Federal Way in that location. My other question, though, in terms of circulation, the lot to the south is zoned R3D. It's not currently developed as that. It's a parking lot. Is that correct? Or has it already been developed?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the lot to the south is developed. It contains the Peace Charter Valley School. Although a majority of the back of that property is a parking lot for the school. Uses.
Okay. So the majority of the area adjacent to this particular development is a parking lot?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so my question is, do we want to require a cross-access agreement on that southern border for when and if that property redevelops? At very least pedestrian, if not vehicular.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, that is a possibility to provide that cross-access easement to the south. I did not consider at the time, and particularly for the pedestrian, only because right now the area is being used for bus circulation, and that main bus route in and out goes right across that border between the two, and I didn't want to put anybody in jeopardy for children. Plus, it's easy enough for them to make it back out and down the street 100 feet and then back into the site. Although the possibility for vehicle connection there is a good idea, I just did not consider that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, we'll hear from the applicant. Is Andy, Megan? Andy? Welcome.
Mayor McLean, council members, Andy Erstead, 310 North 5th Street. Pretty simply, we had a unanimous approval by planning and zoning to recommend approval to this body. A couple of things I wanted to just touch base on. As you know, part of the parcel, one of the parcels already has an R3 designation on it. This is consolidating everything and getting it up to R3. There's some concern about Annette Street and we with ACHD, they are the body that controls the streets, and their designation and in their letter, as David pointed out, they recommended approval, even though the counts were slightly over 1,000. One of the things that I mentioned during our planning and zoning hearing that I think is interesting as a point of reference, our client has 1-bedroom apartments throughout the valley, and the highway district looks at the counts and typically aggregates them and says per apartment it's 1.5 cars, or however the calculation is. In predominantly 1-bedroom apartments, you typically have one car. It's not always, but typically that's kind of the basis. And so when we saw the highway district's comments, I personally was relieved. I've been doing this for a few years, and we do a lot of income limited housing and a lot of market rate housing. And typically the counts can go all over the place when you have 2- and 3-bedroom apartments within complexes. So to have a full complex of all 1-bedroom units, I think reduces that tendency for traffic. The neighborhood association, and if they're here tonight, they may comment on this, provided some photographs, and there's a lot of parking on the street. The current parcel has 16 units on it, and it parks everybody on the property, and that is exactly how we designed the new layout, would be to park everyone on the property and not spill out onto Annette Street. So I think, again, another sort of supporting factor in the notion of 1-bedroom apartments and the limited stress on parking. We still park per the city code. In fact, we park one extra, and we everyone drives a compact Suburban, right? So we didn't leverage the compact spaces to the degree that we could have. We just did full size spaces and the handicap spaces necessary. The other thing is, I think, associated with the traffic is that we don't generate the traffic, and we don't generate the traffic counts ACHD does that, and they do that based on their ITE trip generation metrics and the data that they use. I put a lot of faith in how they treat particularly smaller neighborhoods where traffic could become a big issue. I want to talk a little bit about tree mitigation. On the property is a tree that's, I guess we could get all of us around holding hands, and around one of the trees, there's a very big old kind of tired tree. We can't, because our arborist didn't tell us about the endormancy, the health of the tree. But when you start to look at your tree mitigating plans, you could have one or two trees that are enormous. They may not be very healthy. And I think, as David pointed out, our tree mitigation plan is slightly below if you just do a clear, simple diameter takeoff. And I think that we are fully willing and will comply with the mitigation request, that before anything happens, we have the health of each of the trees identified and worked into the mitigation plan. 42 new trees, in addition to saving 8 mature trees, is going to be a pretty big. It's going to have a pretty big impact. And as those trees grow, we all know that a lot of times we plant trees really close together, and they crowd one or the other out. We're pretty confident that this is a good layout, and if we have to add more, we will add more. So again, very willing to comply with all of the staff's findings of facts and conditions of approval based on conclusion of law. So please, we would love to have you approve this.
Thanks, Andy. Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Andy, it's good to see you. Sorry I'm not there in person. Question about the cross access to the parking lot adjacent to this property. I know it was not included in the PUD. You have an approved PUD. I guess I would just urge you to look at that so that if and when that property does redevelop, and if more housing is put there, that the residents of this development could access that development and vice versa, so neighbors can visit neighbors.
I think Mayor McLean and Councilmember Clegg, it's nice to be here. I wish you were here. It's lots of elbow room. We're all doing safe distance thing and wearing these lovely masks. I always get nervous when we're asked to commit our neighbor's property or somebody who we have no agreement with or owning, no ownership relationship with. I'm happy to, take the request, and we all recognize that request has to have the agreement of the adjacent party on it. And I think if and when the adjacent properties were to develop, it would be a logical request to have. So, I'm not worried about the request that be included, if you will. Just as a sidebar, I had a discussion with one of the neighbors to the property just this afternoon, and they're planting trees across the fence from our client's property, where a little aspen grove has sort of taken off, kind of a volunteer aspen grove. And one of the comments I made was, we will work very closely with our landscape architects to preserve the aspen grove, which means removing some of them to plant the other required trees to get to our mitigation dimension. And I think I mentioned this, and I appreciate the smile, Councilmember Clegg. Sometimes the unintended consequences actually undo something that very naturally is taking shape and happening. So we'll work very closely with our landscape team, which is a phenomenal team, to take care of those things that are salvageable.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, aspens can be an interesting tree. Once they get established, there's no stopping them sometimes. In terms of the access agreement, I would not presume to predict that you currently have permission of the adjacent landowner, but I've found in my time on this council, if the one development doesn't include it when the other one happens, then it can't be connected because the first development, when it was done, didn't have that thought in mind. So I'm just asking you to make sure to document that thought on your property. So if and when there is an opportunity rather than a barrier.
Mayor McLean and Councilmember Clegg, point well taken, and I agree with it. So I think as a condition, that would be something we'd be willing to support.
Great. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we've got Kim Bentley online. Is Kim there? Somebody from Vista?
Madam Mayor, I do not have Kim Bentley online. I do have a John Rollins. And if he's associated with the Vista Neighborhood Association, if he would raise his hand. There's no hand that's been raised, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Nobody else in this room is here for this, correct? How about, is there anybody else online?
Just the person I mentioned, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
All right. Well, with that, any further questions for staff? You probably don't need to rebut yourself. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of CIR 21-30.
Second.
Did we need to? We have a motion and a second. Because the council president's not here, I'm just going to ask. Was there an interest in, or know what the council president's about to ask?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe because the PUD has been approved and not appealed, that we are not in a position to condition the PUD. So I made that request as a good faith request, and I'll trust that the developer and staff will follow up on it.
Great. All right. Then we don't need to change any part of the motion. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just that I appreciate that good faith request by Council President Clegg and the willingness to take a look at that cross access agreement as well. It's a great area that actually is pretty well connected if you can get over Federal Way, but Federal Way is a pretty scary road to be hanging out on. So the less amount of time as possible we can make people hang out on Federal Way would be great. So I think it's great that we can look at this and maybe make that just a little bit easier.
Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Whittings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Willetts. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you both. Good to see you. Oh, and I'm just going to take a moment. Megan Pape, who's with Andy Erstead, is a member of our Historic Preservation Commission. And what has it been now, a year and a half or so? Yeah. Thank you for your service.
Madam Mayor, I kept looking at this person, like this person is so familiar and I couldn't tell who it was. So thank you.
All right, we will move on to CAR 21-31, 2801 Palouse Street with Penelope Constant. Oh my goodness, I was going to get this right. Constantikis. I'm going to get that next time. I'm sorry. Constantinople, Constantikis. That's what I'm going to remember. All right. Delaney, good to see you again. Let's go ahead with the staff. And then we'll have the applicant. And then Kim Bentley was also signed up for this one. So if someone from Vista shows, just raise your hand because we'll go there, but we've got a little bit of time. Go ahead.
Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is a request for a rezone. The project site is 2.09 acres located at 2801 West Palouse Street, approximately 500 feet west of the intersection of Vista Avenue and Palouse Street. It is in close proximity to both the Vista and Overland Community Activity Center and the Vista and Targhee Neighborhood Activity Center. Areas surrounding the subject property consist primarily of single-family homes, condominiums, and pockets of multifamily development that is scattered along Vista Avenue. Currently, the site is developed with 3 single-family homes with several accessory structures and outdoor boat, RV, and trailer storage. The subject site is designated compact on our land use map. The compact land use designation does call for a diversity of detached single-family homes, townhomes, and condominiums at average density of 6 to 15 units per acre. Due to its location within 2 activity centers and less than 500 feet from a principal gateway arterial, a rezone would encourage utilizing the site for compact residential infill while still maintaining compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. Based on the feedback received from the City Council regarding a denial of a previous application to rezone the site to an LOD zone, the applicant is proposing an R2D with DA. This zone is a more appropriate zoning designation with an allowed density of 14.5 units per acre. The rezone is requested to accommodate the future development of a 30-unit townhome project. The townhomes will have detached 2-car garage and will have additional on-site guest parking with several amenities. Included with this rezone is a development agreement, which ties the property to the submitted site plan. If the rezone is approved, subsequent entitlements would be required to further review the specifics of the proposal and ensure that the design is compatible. Public comment was received during our review and as well as late correspondence. These comments detailed concerns with neighborhood and concept and comprehensive plan incompatibility, increase to density and traffic, loss of open space and trees, lack of parking and amenities, and concerns with procedure. Staff found that the application followed procedure and that the proposal meets findings for the rezone. The DA, as well as future entitlements, will help ensure that the compatibility is met with the surrounding neighborhood. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval, and the motion is before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, who's that?
sorry.
Right,
So
Council.
similarly to the previous application, this one does not have an approved PUD. What we have before us tonight is the rezone. There is a development agreement that shows a potential layout. On that, I don't see good pedestrian circulation, and I don't see any connections to either Palouse or potentially to Lemhi on property which it appears as if this developer owns. Was that ever discussion during the development agreement portion of this?
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, as far as the conceptual site plan goes, we did take note of the pedestrian connections internal to the site. We did like to see that those pedestrian connections did make it out to the Palouse Street sidewalk. As far as connection to Lemhi properties are not included with this request and are not a part of the DA at this time. But we do have future design review and PUD requirements, so we would like to capture any feedback we get this evening.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, Penelope, would you like to come on up? Hi there. Welcome.
Hi. For the record, Penelope Constantikes, and Penelope's fine.
And we do, I'm sorry, we do ask people to talk with their masks on.
Okay. It's a little hard. I'm getting over bronchitis and I just,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it's okay. It's just a byproduct of the time of year. So for the record, Penelope Constantikes, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho, 83701. So the application before you this evening is for a rezone on West Palouse with a recommendation, a unanimous recommendation of approval by the Boise Planning and Zoning Commission. With the development agreement that includes the conceptual layout that was submitted with the application to give the city of Boise some idea of the vision the applicant had for the site. And to continue the process, application for preliminary plat. And I do want to emphasize that the plan is to plat the site to make those residences available for purchase and home ownership, as well as a PUD and a design review. We have reviewed the neighborhood comments and appreciate their efforts. At this point in time, the topic before you is a rezone. And I think maybe that their comments are more germane to the future applications where we actually go in and refine the development proposal for the site. If I could, I just want to address Councilwoman Clegg's comments. The pedestrian circulation, I thought that we had done a pretty good job of getting a sidewalk connectivity within the site pretty well dialed in. The neighbors objected to any connection to Lemhi, which is understandable because the connection to Vista Avenue, just a little bit west of on Lemhi, is really substandard. It's an odd place where right-of-way didn't match the homes that were built, and so it's not a very good connection to have. We skipped that mainly because of that connection. So this site is a unique opportunity for infill in that the area is defined as an area of change in Blueprint Boise. It's within easy walking and biking distance to a principal arterial with one of VRT's principal transit lines, 2 activity centers, and a wide variety of services. The project proposes 4 amenities, 2 car garages, an extensive network of sidewalks on the site. The proposed R2 zone is 1 incremental step up from the surrounding R1C and complies with Blueprint Boise's recommendation for the compact land use designation. Because this is a request for a rezone, I decided to dive into the early chapters of Blueprint Boise and focused on the area where the vision and policies of the city are discussed. So the themes that I believe are manifested with this proposed rezone are environmental stewardship. This rezone supports the city's goal of protecting air quality through land use decisions that support increased transit use and access to activity centers and services easily within the range of walking and biking. The rezone enhances the sustainable community vision by supporting steps to reduce impact on the environment. Granted, what we're providing here is incremental, but those incremental steps add up over time. And the modest density increase will add an incremental step to that goal, I believe. Finally, the rezone and subsequent residential development supports the foundation of a more sustainable pattern of growth through land use and transportation policies. A predictable development pattern, the proximity of the site to 2 activity centers identified by the city for their ability to reduce vehicle miles traveled is meaningful as it adds to opportunities to increase pedestrian and bike travel. This is an infill development within an established part of the city based on an incremental increase in zoning designation. According to Blueprint Boise, stable neighborhoods and vibrant activity centers are derived from ensuring that neighborhoods support activity centers and provide a variety of housing choices with high quality urban design compatible with the surrounding context. Interestingly enough, today I heard from some colleagues that the affordability of new homes is now higher than the affordability of existing homes, which is an interesting dynamic. I guess I'm not surprised by it. I'm intrigued and probably want to look at it a little bit more, but that's an unexpected thing that's happening now. A connected community. Communities connect through interactions between people. The best way to interact with your neighborhood is to walk around and greet and inquire. Ask your neighbor, tell me about your beautiful garden. The proposed rezone will facilitate a modest increase in density with so many potential benefits. Support for activity centers, alternative transportation choices, and easy access to the VRT system. Finally, well, not quite finally, a strong, diverse economy. At a macro level, at a micro level, neighborhood level, activity centers add to a strong economy. Activity centers add employment opportunities within neighborhoods and complement the more regional level economy that we have. They work kind of in tandem. Finally, a safe, healthy, and caring community. Infill development is a good alternative to peripheral development. This site utilizes existing infrastructure, including fire and police, services that are already in place, and does not represent an expansion of area for essential services. The proposed rezone with the development agreement is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. It is in the best interest of public convenience and general welfare, and maintains and preserves compatibility of the surrounding zoning and development. With that, I've just done a real quick overview. I would encourage you to ask me any specific questions you'd like me to address rather than me going deep diving into stuff that you already know and or have heard.
Well, thank you for that. Anyone? Looks like the council president is unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's good to see you too, Penelope. Sorry, I'm not there in person. Thank you for commenting on my comments, but I want to clarify a couple of things. So you're right that the proposed development agreement and the site plan that accompanies it has extensive sidewalks. But my observation is that they don't go much of anywhere except to the front doors of the development within the development. And so my request is that you figure out a way to get those sidewalks out to Palouse. And my comment about Lemhi was not a vehicular connection, but a pedestrian bike one. It's 1,250 feet from Vista to the next through street between Palouse and Lemhi, and having a pedestrian connection in what would be almost the middle of that distance does an awful lot to predict and encourage people to walk and bike rather than drive. So it seems like a unique opportunity in this particular case, because it appears you also own that piece of land to the south that does connect to Lemhi.
Thank you. May I respond?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I didn't pose it as a question, but my question is, would you relook at those connections and see if you can figure out a way to do that?
Mayor, Councilwoman, of course. And I turned and looked over my shoulder at the applicant, and he nodded agreement with working out some kind of a pedestrian connection to Lemhi. So we'll work on that, and that'll be part of the it would be an off-site improvement, I guess, technically, but we'll work with staff and try to figure out a way to get that done. In terms of the sidewalk connection to Palouse, I think we probably can pop that sidewalk all the way out to Palouse on the northwest corner, and then it is connected on the northeast corner. So we'll add that connection.
Thank you. Yes, I think the one on the northwest will be quite easy. You just have to extend the one that's going to the trash area to the one that's coming along the side of the building.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And then just to clarify process, because this is a rezone with design review.
But it does have a development agreement that is.
That's what I meant with the DA. I said DR, but it's both, but I meant DA.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily need to be a condition in the approval tonight, but it would come back with the development agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything further? Was that right?
Madam Mayor, we can certainly do it that way. I think
preferred?
we're taking good notes here as well. So when the PUD design review and subdivision all come through, and the subdivision will be before this body as well.
Great, all right. Anything else? Thank you, Penelope.
Thank you.
Is anyone from Vista Neighborhood Association with us?
Madam Mayor, I have no one online.
Okay, nobody online at all.
Nobody online at all.
Alrighty then. There is nobody else in this room that is planning on testifying on this item. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of CAR 21-31.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Madam
Madam-
Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilmember Halliburton, then the council president.
Oh, just, to the applicant Penelope, thank you for sticking with this one. I know that this came before us a long time ago and we sent you back with information on kind of what we wanted to see. And I think you came back with what looks like an improved application. And again, same as last time, thank you, Council President Clegg, for bringing up some of those pedestrian access conversations. There's a street just to the north, Ab Street, that kind of dead ends there. And this does kind of have the ability to make pedestrian friendly streets mid-block, which is wonderful. So again, just thank you to the applicant for sticking with this one and bringing something back that is really great to approve. Also, thank you for making home ownership possible within these units as well. That's not always something that we see on council, and I think it's exciting to see.
Agreed. Council president.
thank you. Well, I'll echo Councilmember Halliburton. I was going to say that I'm going to support the motion because it does in fact support our comprehensive plan, and particularly in this area. Not only does it increase housing opportunities, but increases it in a way that offers home ownership opportunities in a neighborhood that hasn't had a lot of those with new development recently. And given the location proximate to Vista, given the location proximate to the mixed use zone, it seems appropriate to approve this zone change that would allow an increase in densities so that you can achieve those goals.
All right, anyone else? Well, with that, clerk, will you call the roll?
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Well, thank you. It was great to see you both. And if there's nothing else to come before us, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
You gonna second this?
Second.
Second.
Oh, I didn't hear the second. All right. I don't know why I was looking at you. Sorry. We have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we oppose, we are adjourned.